Welcome to Vinyl Poetry Lounge, where legendary lyrics spark poetic fires. I'm your hostess for the next hour, Jana Lopez. So kick back, relax, and let the words carry you home. Welcome to Vinyl Poetry Lounge, day after whatever hot dogs, fireworks, extravaganza, 4th of July mayhem you might have found yourself in. And I'm so glad to be with you here on this Sunday. And I was telling my producer, Jared McMullen, just 10 minutes ago that I'm feeling a little sluggish today. And I don't know if it's Sunday or if it's ready for the new week or what, but some days are just like that, where you're feeling a little bit slower than usual. So to me, that just means we are going to take our time this evening. And I'm here to inspire and connect and engage you in poetry through music, through lyrics, through the songs that we grew up with and listened to, and to enable you to hear these songs that we sang so many times, but to hear them in new ways. And it's always interesting and amazing to me that when I work with somebody, teaching them poetry, guiding them through what I call poetic intelligence sessions, that people are always very surprised when something sparks and they're like, wow, that's what that meant. And so this is just to get you to exercise those brain muscles a little bit, to reflect a little bit, and to actually just have a little bit of time where you're doing nothing but hanging out with me, talking about music. And if you feel like participating, that is always encouraged. So in my day-to-day life, I am a book writing coach. I help people start and finish the books of their dreams. And so I've learned some things about what keeps them stuck from their expression. And I have found that poetry is the way to open people up in very surprising, unimagined ways once they get over the barriers. So this is an easy peasy way to contemplate the new meaning of poetry, and that it's everywhere. It's part of our everyday lives, and it's apparent in the music that we listen to every day. I'm also the first poet in residence at Creighton University School of Medicine, and I teach poetry as a form of mental health and compassion, self-connection, so that busy, overwhelmed, burned out medical professionals and students have a way to heal themselves with just a few minutes a day of writing poetry. And I'll put poetry in air quotes, right? Just a few minutes a day. And they're able to relieve and release all kinds of stress. So it's an amazing, innovative program that I'm part of. And you know what I know is that poetry works. It actually helps heal broken hearts and rotting brains, because our brains are getting too used to having artificial intelligence fill everything in for us. So that's it. That's my spiel about why I'm here, who I am, and what I do. So we're going to get on to the music tonight. And we are going to unpack and look at Crazy by Seal. And why we're going to do this song is because the idea of revolution, evolution, sort of resistance, rebellion after yesterday's 250th celebration, some of us are feeling restless and rebellious. And this song really does speak to those ideas in some very profound yet subtle ways. So that's why I chose this song for today. I remember hearing this song and just marveling at the sound of the song, the look of Seal at that time, coming out of the 80s into the 90s. And he just sounded different, looked different, the music was different. And so he always seemed quite mysterious to me. And most people then go on to know and appreciate Kiss from a Rose, which was his next song. But for now, tonight, we're going to talk about Crazy. And I love the title. I love the title because it implies something's up. It implies something's different. And so let's go back to when Seal was a child. Now, I was curious because I wasn't sure what his name really was. And so Seal was born in London in 1963. He has a Nigerian mother and a father who is Brazilian. And yes, his name is Seal. His full name is Seal Henry Olasgun Olamide Adiola Samuel. And so he has a very, very long name, but his name is actually very much part of his identity. And growing up, he did spend part of his childhood years in foster care. And he later lived with his father, but his father was physically abusive. And so as a teenager, he developed a form of lupus, and it was an autoimmune condition that left the permanent scarring on his face. And so the condition eventually became inactive, but the scarring remained. And so I was always curious about the scars on his face. And so before becoming a singer, Seal did all kinds of interesting things. He earned a diploma in architecture, and he did some electrical engineering. He sang with local bands and toured Asia. And it was his travels through Thailand and India, he said, that profoundly shaped his outlook about music and songwriting. And those were those experiences that inspired him to be reflective and hopeful and started to pave the way for the song that became Crazy. So Crazy was written by Seal and a songwriter named Guy Sigsworth in 1990. And it appeared on his self-titled album, Seal. Just look at it. There's something so interesting about it that he is part of his own name as a visual and as a graphic. And of course, it's set against the stark white background. And so this song became number 2 on the Billboard charts in the UK. And then it reached number 7 in the United States. And so this song is really about changing the world. Crazy is about changing the world. Many people thought that it was about like some sort of a romance or a love song, but Seal has repeatedly explained it as that being inspired by this extraordinary political upheaval that was going on in the world around 1989 and 1990. There were 2 major events. So we have to scratch our brains. We're going back, way back in the time machine. And the first is the fall of the Berlin Wall. And just look at that. You know, that was such a moment in time and in history. Such an extraordinary global event. And then the second event that inspired this song was the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests and massacre. And he said he felt history had reached a tipping point. And according to him, in his words, I felt the cycle had reached its apex. I felt the world changing, and I felt profound things happening. And so this is really what inspired him. And so before he became famous, he spent a lot of time going through Thailand, and that period in his life became very spiritual for him. And so he had the opportunity to ask questions of himself around, what kind of artist do I want to become? What do I actually want to talk and sing about? And how can I make music that matters? And so all of these reflections became part of the foundation for Crazy. And so the famous chorus doesn't celebrate insanity. It doesn't celebrate people losing their minds. What it's really about is that humanity sometimes needs radical imagination, the willingness to think differently, challenge old systems, and embrace unconventional ideas to move forward. And you know what? We need that in 2026. It means having the courage to imagine a better future. And so the lyrics themselves, which we will further unpack, are intentionally meant to be somewhat vague. And he did explain some of these individual lines, which we will go into. But rather than telling one story about one person or one event, this song is like a collage of world events and a personal awakening and a sense of hope and autonomy, that people can do something through their imagination and creativity in their thinking. And so he worked with Trevor Horn, who was a producer known for working with Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Yes. And he said that this was not an easy song to record because they were aiming super high. And so they had these keyboards and these atmospheric textures and rhythms and soaring vocals, and set against what Seal wanted to do was this music video to complement the sound. And so he did this great video where everything was white in the background, and there were multiple versions of Seal dancing and appearing. And then there was snow falling at the end, and he's holding a dove, which symbolizes hope and peace. And so he won several awards for this song. And there was an acoustic version that came out. And this was one of those songs, I think, that really defines the bridge between the 1980s and the 1990s, from like that alternative music sound, new wave sound, into like a 90s version of pop and soul. And so what I'll have you think about as we start to dive into this song is, are you willing to do something or think something or act somehow differently in order to create change? Are you willing to get a little crazy? And so with that, let us start with this song. Now, before we go to the first clip, there's kind of like he sort of mumbles, whispers these 3 lines. In a church by the face, he talks about the people going under. Only child know. And so it sets up this very mysterious entry point that it's about going into this place, maybe praying, hoping, having faith. And he talks about people going under. Maybe he's confessing his worries, and maybe he gets the response, only child know. Like, this is what the children know. They know the innocence, they know the hope. And so, and these, of course, are my own interpretations. This is not something Seal has said himself, but that sets the tone for entering into the song as a mystery.
Man decides after 17 years that what he goes there for is to unlock the door. With those around him criticize and sleep.
All right, so a man decides after 70 years that what he goes there for is to unlock the door. And so a man decides after 70 years. This, to me, talks about somebody who's reflected on their life and maybe has some regrets about not doing more or becoming more. And 70 years is the time when we start to really think about how much time we have left and what we're going to do with that time. So this one line to me just talks about a person coming to terms with choices in their lives and wanting to make a better choice. Then that what he goes there for is to unlock the door. And that's like the idea, because the song started with the whisper about being in a church. So this setting is that he's seeking some spiritual guidance and some heart healing. So that what he goes there for is to unlock the door. He wants to become awakened and inspired and alive. And this next line, while those around him criticize and sleep. Now, I find this so much in day-to-day living, that there are always those that criticize others for taking action, or criticize systems, or criticize people. And all they do is complain. And they don't do anything themselves to be the change. But this is a great line, while those around him criticize and sleep. And those are the other people that just sort of let everybody else do the heavy lifting. And being sleep here to me means inactive, uninvolved, disinterested, disassociated. And so already Seal is setting up these ideas of activation and change.
Through a fractal on a breaking wall, I see you, my friend, and touch your face again. Miracles will happen as we tread.
And through a fractal on a breaking wall, I see you, my friend. And so maybe the person who went into the church sees some sort of a light, a fractal of light. You know how stained glass windows project just a hint of light, and through a fractal on a breaking wall. So it definitely gives the feeling of an old church, and through a fractal on a breaking wall. It's such a beautiful, subtle detail and image. And then he says, I see you, my friend, and touch your face again. And so the friend could be God, it could be love, it could be a reflection of himself, it could be whatever moves him as spirit. And so just through a fractal on a breaking wall, I see you, my friend. So just in that thread of a moment, he's touched, he feels this moment of connection, and miracles will happen as we trip. And so what that means to me is that it's like, I'm going to give myself over to this experience. I'm going to be open-hearted. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to have faith. And together we're going to take this journey. And so miracles will happen as we trip.
But we're never gonna survive unless we get a little crazy. No, we're never gonna survive unless we are a little crazy.
All right, so I think this is the realization, the revelation. He's opened himself up for something different. He's ready to give himself into that space of trust and hope. And then the declaration, we are never going to survive unless we get a little crazy. And so what this means to me, and these are one of those lines that stay with you forever. Years and years I've heard these words. And when I've had moments of doubt or fear or trepidation, or I've had circumstances appear in my life that required some form of declarative action, I always think of this line that I'm never going to survive unless I get a little crazy. And so what this is sharing is that we have to be uncomfortable. We have to get out of how we always think, how we always act, what we already know, and go to the edge, at least a little closer to that edge. And so he repeats this, we're never going to survive unless we are a little crazy. And so the first part of it is we get a little crazy, and we're not going to survive unless we are a little crazy. And so that means taking the action, being in the moment, standing in for something towards that edge.
Walking through my head, while others gotta go to shoot the other one, and yet together they were friends at school.
All right, this one's powerful. This part is really powerful. Crazy yellow people walking through my head. And to me, these are the thoughts of doubt and fear and just all of the things we tell ourselves that we can't do. And one of them's got a gun. to shoot the other one. And, that something's going to have to give. Like, it's a definitive, something drastic is going to happen here. And the sadness of this is, and yet together they were friends at school. And so, metaphorically speaking, maybe you were somebody who was super creative when you were a kid. And over time and over life, you lose your sense of creativity. You get full of doubt and fear. And yet that part of you was who you were when you were a child. Yet they were friends at school. And so get it, right? Like, this is the idea of surpassing and exceeding expectations and fears and doubts, and that the crazy yellow people walking through my head, to me, it's just all the things we tell ourselves, the committee that constantly chatters away and erodes our self-confidence. So much so that one of them's got a gun to shoot the other one. So I really appreciate the poetry in this phrase around the images of confidence and fear and the battle between those two.
If I were there when we first took the pill, then be bad, I'll be bad, I'll be bad. Miracles will happen, that's the school.
If all were there when we first took the pill. Now, to me, this is if there had been support when the doubt first came. The pill to me is representative of trying to alleviate the pain of doubt and the way we try to numb out our fears and our doubts. So if all were there when we first took the pill, then maybe miracles will happen as we speak. So even though we do what we do to numb our doubts and fears, that life, being the miracle that it is going to unfold around us, and to be awake for those moments, to be alive to those moments.
A sky full of people, only some want to fly, isn't that crazy? In a world full of people, only some want to fly, isn't that crazy? In a heaven of people, there's only some want to fly, isn't that crazy? Oh, baby. In a world full of people, there's only some want to fly, isn't that crazy?
All right. So what I love about this is that it brings together the idea of looking up at the sky. So being kind of wondering. So in a sky full of people, only some want to fly. Isn't that crazy? Meaning that so many people in a sky full of potential, so much space to fly, that only some want to. And what a loss that is. Isn't that crazy? It's like, who gives up that capacity and that potential? In a world full of people, only some want to fly. So he goes from the sky to the earth. In a world full of people, only some want to fly. And isn't that crazy? So the people that you see every day, that you know, and strangers alike, They have all the potential here on earth, and only some want to take it. Only some will take it. And as I said in the beginning about going to the edge, and only a few will want to go there. And then he says, in a heaven of people, there's only some that want to fly. And ain't that crazy? So in a heaven, that's to me in the idea of faith and hope, that only some want to extend having hope and faith. And isn't that crazy? So I think those three words, sky, world, and heaven, represent three different things. And I think sky is about potential. I think world is about the people that have potential. And heaven to me is the spiritual capacity that we have to connect to the miracles that are around us every day. And flying is symbolic. Flying is about meeting your potential, extending your potential, throwing caution to the wind for your potential, believing in your potential. And so only some want to fly. And what Seal has said about this is that many people are afraid of freedom and transformation. And so rather than telling this, as a literal story, I think what he's conveying is that we have the capacity as human beings with our potential. And many people are afraid of it. They're afraid to fly. And isn't that crazy? So what do you think of Crazy by Seal? Does it make you want to go out and change the world, or at least do something good for yourself? Does it inspire you to meet yourself at that uncomfortable edge that's not familiar, that's not part of your everyday thinking, that might just be a little closer to that edge, maybe just a little crazy? And some of the craziest ideas are the things that make the difference in our own lives. They're the things that spark us to become more, do more, try to seek more for ourselves. And I think given that we're in 2026, that we need to be just a little bit crazy. So that's Seal, Crazy, an amazing song, beautiful lyrics from start to finish, so much to think about and be inspired by. And I just love how this song has stayed with me all these years, and it becomes a touchstone for me when I'm wanting to do something a little uncomfortable that I think to myself, I'm never going to survive unless I get a little crazy. So thank you for joining me on Vinyl Poetry Lounge. I hope you've had a good time. I know I have. Feel free to send some comments either on the YouTube page or on the Facebook page or Instagram, or you can go to my website, janalopez.com, and there is a place, Vinyl Poetry Lounge, where you can contribute, leave a tip for some coffee, or leave some comments, either way. But I look forward to hearing about how you're going to do something to change the world and do something to get just a little bit crazy. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me for this week's show of Vinyl Poetry Lounge. I'm your hostess, Jana Lopez. Keep your vinyl spinning and poetry flowing till we meet again next time.